Welcome, everyone, to this week's meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I'm Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Now, I want to start by going to a couple of our members here in the meeting this evening to see what they're doing with their podcasts and their other groups. So let's start with Jeff Collins. Jeff, how you doing, brother?
Thanks, Bruce. Yes, I have a new podcast out called Baseball and BBQ. It drops every Saturday. And this week is with Jeff Heisens of National League Town. But the barbecue guest is named Clint Cantwell. And I'm going to put it in the chat because he has a story about the Barry Bonds 756 baseball that I guarantee you have not heard. So I'm going to put it in the chat. It starts at the 27-minute mark. So if you want to stop, you want to skip all the other barbecue talk, go to the 27-minute mark and you'll hear the story. It's unbelievable. Thank you.
Don't skip the barbecue talk because that's good too. So don't do that. Hey, Gary, what's going on with the New York Giants Preservation Society? What do you got up this week?
Hey, Bruce, we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the last championship, 1954 New York Giants. We're going to be showing the World Series DVD from that night, from that year. And we're also going to ask anybody who was a witness to it to come forth and speak on their experience following the last championship in New York.
How many members do you have who were there?
Yeah, we have quite a few members who were there. We're going to usually our meetings are Thursdays, but because it's Halloween, we're going to hold it on Wednesday. If anybody's interested in hopping on board, just contact Bruce and forward him. He'll forward me the information.
That's right. Now, do they get to wear their Halloween costume too?
If they would like, absolutely.
Okay. All right. All right. Now on with our feature presentation. Perhaps you have in your collection or are thinking of purchasing what might be an artifact that could be a part of baseball history. It might be something from a long-gone stadium, a bat, a uniform. However, there is little or no documentation about the piece. No authentication letter from a major auction house, no bill of sale, and no backstory from the original owner. With so many scams today in the hobby, how do you know if it's authentic? Michael Kane recaps the hope, despair, and joy he experienced during a 2-year journey to authenticate a wooden scoreboard number that he received as a birthday present during the pandemic. It is also a story about total strangers who provided their time, guidance, and support through his journey. Kane talks about the key role SABR played in his journey and how this odyssey led to a new friendship with a former Major League Baseball player who played in 3 All-Star games. He concludes with some lessons learned that will provide collectors with insights on how to authenticate items that they own or are thinking of purchasing. Michael Kane is a SABR member who has been with us for over 6 years. He contributes posts to the SABR Baseball Cards Committee and is a high-tech sales and marketing executive with an undergraduate degree from Penn State and an MBA from Suffolk University. For the past 25 years, he's been working on compiling a complete set of the 1961 Topps base baseball card set. And last I heard, he was 40 cards away from finishing that. Michael Kane, welcome to Northern New England. How are you tonight, sir?
Good. Thank you very much. I'll begin by sharing this screen here. And can everybody see that? We'll
yes.
Into full screen mode. Thanks for joining. I'm now about 25 cards short of my 61 set. I made a little bit of progress. But before I begin my authentication journey, I'd like to tell you a little bit of background about myself because it does relate to the journey. I was born in Pittsburgh, but when I was 2 years old, my parents moved 20 miles west of Boston to a town called Sudbury, Massachusetts. But I did take frequent trips to the Pittsburgh area to visit relatives. And in the mid-'60s and late '60s, my parents would put me on an airplane and send me for weeks at a time to spend a good part of the summer with my uncle and grandmother who were near the Pittsburgh area. This is a picture of my uncle and with Dave Parker, who should be in the Hall of Fame. I think they probably called each other the morning of the before the photo to wear matching outfits. But Anyway, he was the ultimate Pittsburgh Pirates fan. When I visited him, we would constantly have the radio on, listening to KDKA and Bob Prince broadcast the Pirates games. He took me to Forbes Field. He showed me where to stand outside the stadium to get autographs of players as they were coming out of the stadium after games. And at one game, he pointed out Pie Traynor, who was coming out of the stadium. At that time, Pie Traynor was a broadcaster for KDKA. And I was able to get Pie Traynor's autograph. Now let's fast forward to October of 2019. What's going on? It's the pandemic. And for my birthday, my son gives me this item. And it was a wooden number 2. And I thought to myself, is this some kind of a joke? And he said, Dad, turn over the number. And on the back was a yellow sticky saying that it was a number from Forbes Field. It was from the scoreboard and obtained directly from the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 70s. I asked him if there was any documentation. He said no, that he got it from a business associate. I was ecstatic. Here was an artifact from my cathedral baseball that I attended and where my boys of summer played. But I said to myself, is it really authentic? The first organization I reached out to authenticate my item was Hunt Auctions. They're based in Pennsylvania and a well-known auction house, and they do sell personal collections of pirate players, and have even sold the Roberto Clemente collection that was in the family. And so I emailed Hunt Auctions, described my item, and got this email back. Again, it's during the pandemic. Email was from Jeremy Kraft, and he said that he had never seen a wooden scoreboard number before. All the ones that he had seen were made of thin metal with a hole at the top where they'd hang the number. And but he did leave me with this important piece of information. Until another example with some very solid history surfaces that is made of wood to compare to yours, I would think it is a bit difficult for anyone to state with certainty that it was used at Forbes Field. So, pretty kind of disappointing email, but the next organization I decided to reach out to was the Pirates directly. I sent an email to Joe Belladou, who was head of the alumni affairs section at management with the Pirates. He knew Jeremy and said that all the numbers that he had seen were made of thin metal, but he did tell me that he would put me in contact with Len Martin, and he's someone that I should reach out to. He was the unofficial historian for Forbes Field. This is in November of 2019. Len is not only the unofficial historian of Forbes Field, he also wrote the book on Forbes Field. And with enough patience, a sharp X-Acto knife, and plenty of time, you too can build a replica scale model of Forbes Field. Len was extremely generous with his time. He asked me to send him some photographs of the item. He posted those on various social media sites having to do with the Pirates and Forbes Field, and went all the way back into the early days of Forbes Field to see if he could find any evidence of wooden scoreboard numbers. He couldn't, but he did have in his possession a metal scoreboard number. This is a picture of the one that he has, and a picture of Sally O'Leary holding it, and she worked for the Pirates at the time. So again, pretty disappointing. However, I did hold out hope. There was an article in the SABR publication about the last game at Forbes Field, and one of the sentences read, "They hung from the scoreboard with one hand while flinging the wooden numerals through the air like frisbees. Again, they're saying they're wood, they're not metal, so I did have some hope. I also remembered that when I attended the SABR 48 convention in Pittsburgh, that Frank Thomas was on the panel. He was on a panel that was talking about Branch Rickey. Frank was not a fan of Branch because Branch was very pretty unrealistic when it came to negotiating contracts with players. But at the end of the panel, Frank mentioned that for a small fee that he did sign autographs through the mail, and that any money that he received from signing would be donated to 2 charities that he was involved in. So I decided to reach out to Frank and see if he was aware of any wooden scoreboard numbers. I got this response back from Frank. Again, this is December 2019. He goes, "All I knew that when playing left field, all the numbers I've ever seen, even when I would run into the scoreboard, have always been metal." So again, another pretty disappointing response back. And a little bit later, I came across an article in a journal about Stadia. Stadia is a term that's used for collecting any kind of artifacts from ballparks. And in that, this is a description. And in the article, there was a dealer named Richie quoted a number of times. And I did a little bit of research on Richie and saw his website. And he had just about everything imaginable from multiple ballparks, hundreds of items. And I said, this is my guy. This is the guy that's going to verify that my wooden scoreboard number is authentic. So I reached out to him, sent him the photographs of the item, and he came back with very disappointing emails saying, "My gut tells me that this is a fantasy, a tribute piece, Michael, and not real. Every scoreboard number that I have ever seen has either a hole or a clip on it to allow it to be easily removed, as well as hung inside the scoreboard." So I had basically put my search to authenticate my item on. I paused it and I wrote a blog piece for the SABR baseball card blog, talking about my journey, some of the items that Frank had signed for me, and said that I had put my journey on pause. And then on May 3rd, 2020, Matt commented on my blog saying that he had seen a wooden scoreboard number from Forbes Field at, of all places, the Hall of Fame. So I was ecstatic. There was another person that commented on my blog also that also said that any of the numbers used in the next game here section of the scoreboard at Forbes Field were wooden. So you can see there's 2 sections on this scoreboard. There's one that tracks the games and the scores per inning. Those were the metal numbers, but the ones at the bottom, the next game here, where they put the time of the game or the date, those numbers were wood. This is a photograph from the last game at Forbes Field, and the last 2 years that Forbes Field, they moved the next game here sign to run vertically along the right-hand side of the scoreboard. And again, those numbers were wood. So now I had to reach out to the Hall of Fame. Again, it's the pandemic. The Hall of Fame is closed. So I sent an email to the research department saying I was trying to authenticate my wooden scoreboard number, and did they have one on display? I got a terse email back from Cassidy Lent who works in the research department. And if any of you have done research, you probably know Cassidy. Even some people at SABR refer to her as Saint Cassidy. But the terse email was, we don't authenticate items. If you do want to try to authenticate an item, here's a list of auction houses. Hunt Auction was one of the names on the email. Said to myself, been there, done that. But she did say that there was a wooden scoreboard number on display at the hall. I was very happy to get that email, but I didn't ask her one piece of critical information in the email. Was it from Forbes Field? So I fired off a second email, and she did verify that, again, it was from Forbes Field. So now I knew that I had to go to the hall directly to see the number. Fast forward to August of 2021, I contacted Cassidy, told her that I'd like to come to the Hall of Fame and bring my number with me and be able to take a picture of my number next to the one they had on display. She said that was okay. And now that the museum was open, she also sent me a photograph of the item that they had from Forbes Field on display. That's the number 9 that you see here, which was great to get. A month later, roughly a month later, I went to Cooperstown, met up with some fellow SABR members. Some of them were from the Chicago area, and was able to bring in my number. There it is, the number 2, and put it up against the one that they had on display. And as you can see, it's a pretty much of a direct match for the one at the hall. So felt really happy that kind of no better place to authenticate an item than to match it up with one in the Hall of Fame. My first letter to Frank Thomas was not my last one. From December of 2019 to January of 2023, we communicated on a very regular basis, sending letters back and forth to one another. Frank was old school. He didn't have a computer, so everything had to be done by post. We did have several phone calls. On those phone calls, we'd have to talk about how our families were doing, and had discussed trying to meet up and go to a game together at PNC Park. And that, because of Frank's health, he was having trouble walking, really wasn't in the cards. So we weren't able to do that. But I did contact him in June of 2022, saying I was going to be coming to Pittsburgh and could I stop by for a visit. So I went to Pittsburgh with my daughter and her boyfriend. One of our stops was at the remaining section of the Forbes Field wall, which is now on the Pitt campus. We also went inside one of the buildings that's near the wall, where they have the original home plate under glass from the last game. And the next day, was able to meet Frank at his house. I was expecting to stay for maybe 20 minutes, turned into a 90-minute stay. We talked about his playing days, some of his teammates, players that he played against, talked a lot about our families. And at the end of the conversation, he mentioned to me that the Mets had contacted him and they wanted his measurements. They wanted to come to the Old Timers game that they were going to have in August. And I told Frank I would definitely be there. This is a picture of Frank, number 25, at the Old Timers game. I thought the Mets did an incredible job with the Old Timers game. I wish more organizations would have these games often. over 60 members, former members of players attended the Old Timers game. Howie Ross did all the introductions, and at the ceremony, they also retired Willie Mays' number. So being a baseball card guy, I developed a checklist. Here's my authentication checklist to help you out with your item. We talked about auction houses. Here are some of the more well-known ones. Reach out to dealers and collectors, ball clubs, former players, managers and coaches, manufacturers. If you have a bat, contact the Louisville Slugger, or a glove, contact Rawlings. There are plenty of images online. You could describe your bat or glove from an era or a uniform, and bring up plenty of images. Also, Getty has a great archive of images for baseball. There's a Rucker archive for SABR. There's now even things called photo matching services where if you take have your item and you want the service to find a game where it was used, or a picture of the bat, they'll help you match it. There's some great publications like Sports Collectors Digest that had the Stata article in it, and also Beckett's Vintage Collector is another good publication. And then, of course, the SABR members, chapters, the committee. There's even a ballpark committee at SABR that I did reach out to them. They weren't aware of any wooden scoreboard numbers. And then there's the research collection that has bios on thousands of players, along with articles on key games. And then there's social media, Facebook, Twitter, X, and you may even consider blogging about your item. And then, of course, the one it didn't come to mind to me directly was the Hall of Fame and the research department, which was extremely helpful. What are the lessons learned? I think it's really critical that you have to find another example of your item, or it's going to be very difficult to say that it is authentic. There's a great group of people out there willing to help you, so leverage that knowledge of those experts, whether they be collectors or fellow SABR members, or dealers. And then when you do reach out, make sure you provide all the details. Give them the dimensions, the colors, the markings, the weight, any documentation you have. Provide images that from all different angles, close-ups, and make sure that they're in focus. And in this case, social media is your friend. We may not all like it, but it's extremely helpful when you are doing your search to authenticate your item. And then when you do reach out to the Hall of Fame, make sure that you do not use the word authenticate unless you want a terse email back from Cassidy, and ask the right questions in the email up front first. And then don't give up. It took me 2 years to authenticate my item. So there's there was mostly a lot of downs in my search, but it came out just great at the end. And then it's not the destination, it's the journey. And that was so true with this journey for me. Without being part of taking this journey, I never would have become friends with Frank Thomas. I met so many wonderful people that helped me with my journey, and were so willing to spend time and to do their own research and to help me as well. I also want to mention 2 people that I didn't mention before. One is Nick Vosbrink, who is the co-chairman of the SABR Baseball Card Committee. It was obvious to me when I was communicating with Frank Thomas that he was running out of things to sign, especially during the pandemic. He was getting a lot more requests. So Nick makes his own baseball cards, and he did a custom card for Frank Thomas, and we made 600 copies to send to Frank. And also Jason Schwartz, also known as Heavy J, did a really nice glitter card treatment of an old Bowman card of Frank's and sent it to him for his birthday. So a couple of things that, just can't make this stuff up. Department that happened along the journey was that when I was, again, communicating with Frank, he would ask me a couple of times if he could help me clean up an image that he had of this particular photograph. He would send out a grainy black and white kind of out of focus image of this picture to people that gave him, $25 or more for his autograph. So this was kind of a premium item. And it took me a while, but I finally found the original photograph in a 1964 Braves yearbook. I scanned it and enlarged it, and then asked Heavy J if he knew anybody that could help me clean it up even better and make it sharper. And he put me in contact with a custom card creator and graphic designer. And this person sharpened it up, colorized it, as you can see. And of all things, he was friends with Dick Allen and Dick Allen's family. And if you know the history between Dick Allen and Frank, you'd probably find that extremely interesting. But anyway, we sent this to Frank, and he was very happy with the final image and made a number of copies for him to hand out. But that, and it concludes what I have to say. Happy to answer any questions that folks have.
All right. If you have a question for our presenter, Michael Kane, this evening, go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. You'll see another button that says raise hand, and we will get you in line to ask questions of our presenter, Michael Kane. Mike, I want to ask you, you mentioned the emotional roller coaster ride of this journey. Had you found that it was not authentic, it was, I don't know, a flea market find or something like that, I don't even know how to put it, would that have diminished the joy of the gift at all? Or was the authentication just the validation of the whole thing?
I think the journey was more important. Like, even if I found out that it was, fake, or there wasn't another copy available. I mean, I met so many incredible people, right? I mean, everybody that I reached out to, from, Pirates Organization to Hunt Auctions to, Len Martin to the dealer, Richie, they're just incredible, willing to help me many of them did their own research, responded back in a timely manner. And then said, just going on the journey, meeting Frank Thomas was phenomenal. Something that I never, that to me was one of the highlights, right? Becoming friends with Frank. So it's a, and the bonus, the bonus was, of course, being able to authenticate it, at the hall, right? But it was all good. Really liked it.
Funny you mentioned Cassidy Lent. We, Dixie and I agree that we call her Saint Cassidy of Cooperstown, the patron saint of baseball history. Molly, you're up.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us. I found that absolutely fascinating and gave me insight that I never thought about in terms of baseball collectibles. And thank you.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Tom Emerson in the chat. Tom, are you able to turn on your audio?
I think. Can you hear me now, Bruce?
I can hear you. Ask that question on
Yeah.
camera, would you?
Sure. Yeah, Michael, thanks. That was fantastic, and I especially like the end in your answer to Bruce that it's the journey and not necessarily the result. But I was curious, were you ever at a point where you weren't making progress and you thought, well, I have it, and I'm not going to go any further?
It was at that point where where I got to the point where I did write a blog about it, right, saying, here's all the contacts, that I made, the organizations, the people, right, talked about 2 baseball cards that Frank had signed for me, and I just said I'm putting it on pause. I run out of options, right, and if it wasn't for the comments to my blog that this person, Matt, actually saw, a wooden scoreboard number at Cooperstown, I would have never known it existed, right? I mean, it never even occurred to me to reach out to the Hall of Fame, as a to contact, and then of course there was another comment that verified, that kind of drilled into, about the 2 sections of the scoreboard, and the next game here section did have wooden numbers. So yeah, it turned around, like 180 degrees after those comments, right? It was like, I'm not going to find out the answer to, wow, there's one at the Hall of Fame,
Oh, you're up. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. One quick follow-up question. Those guys, Matt and the other fellow, did you know them or they just stumbled upon your blog?
No, they were reading my blog, and they commented. I didn't know them, at all. No.
Tom, we appreciate you. Jeff Cohen, now you're up. Go get him, buddy.
Thanks, Bruce. And it was a great presentation, Michael. Thank you very much. Always interested in authentication. Did you run into any irreputable authentication services? Because I know they're out there, and it's sometimes such a dirty business. But I was wondering if you ever ran into any of the irreputable ones.
I did not on this journey. No. I mean, I think I listed everybody that I reached out to, which were all, I consider, reputable folks. I didn't, but there are horror stories, right? And there was even I know the Ruth jersey that they had at the National is something that when some people thought it was authentic, some people didn't think it was, from that particular game or whatever. I don't know, so yeah, it's that's why you got to find. I mean, you have to, like that, what Hunt said, you have to find another item that you can compare it to, right? That I think that's so important when you do try to authenticate something. It's hard. Right. It's hard to say you have one of one, right? I mean, without any documentation, right? It's just so.
Yeah, we all have these horror stories. I was at a flea market once, and it was selling a big probably a 10 by 17 photo of Mike Piazza autographed, and they said, oh, it was authenticated because they had a little certificate that anybody can print up. So it's just. Yeah, you got to be really careful. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
Karen Holleran, you're up.
Hi, well, this was great. Coming from being a Pittsburgher and having to take all the crap that people seem to find us. Everybody says, well, you're from Pittsburgh. Like it's a horrible thing. It's not.
No.
How long did it take you when you were done for this journey?
About 2 years. It took me 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And
not bad.
And the pandemic's part of it, right? I mean, if the Hall of Fame was open earlier, I could have gone to the hall but it wasn't. So but yeah, it took me 2 years, about 2 years to do it.
Well, thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
good.
More questions. Dixie Tarango, you're up. How you doing, Dixie?
I'm doing fine. Karen, the easy answer to those people is we've got the best stadium in baseball and you don't.
Bingo.
That's right. That's right. I second or third that. Yeah.
Michael, where do you live now?
Where do I live? I live in Sudbury, Massachusetts, 20 miles west of Boston. But
Okay, because
I have gone to PNC Park a number of times. I love PNC Park. I love it.
do you know that the big card show is a week and a half away? Out in Wilmington at the
Yes, yeah.
museum?
The one at the Shriners. Yep. Yeah.
You can finish. You must be able to finish off your set there if you got enough money.
I know. Unfortunately, it's all the crazy high. They're all high numbers, in that last
Well, then you
series.
need enough money.
That's right. That's right.
Got to hit the lottery first. Steve Weisensale in the chat. Can a faded autograph on a photo be restored? If so, who should I contact? Michael, do you have any insight to that?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Can a faded autograph on a photo be restored? If so, who should I contact? Do you have any thoughts on that question?
I don't know. Whatever you do, don't write over it. I know that's a no-no, but I wouldn't know how you would do that.
Yeah, that's got to be very difficult. Joe Ross has a question. Joe, how you doing, brother?
Okay, how are you?
I'm terrific. You're up. Go get him.
Great show. Loved it. Very, very informative. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first is your son gave you that number. How old was he at the time?
He was, let me see, probably like 27, 28 years old.
Okay, I was thinking more if he was like 10 or 11, you would have loved it even if it were a phony.
Yeah. No.
The other question I have is, you might have mentioned it and I missed it, but why do you not use the word authenticate when you're talking to the hall?
Well, because they so it's, first of all, it's the research department, and that's not their job, right? They don't authenticate items. It's more of you would go to an auction house, right? To get the letter of authentication, or if it's a magazine or a baseball card, you go to different organizations like Beckett's, for instance, to get it slabbed and authenticate it. But they want to stay away from that, right? They don't want to be responsible and say that it is authentic. But they will verify, like I said, if they have another item. If you ask the right questions, right, they will tell you they have an item on display, or maybe they even have it. You have so much stuff in their archives, right, that they might have an item that's not even on display that's similar to yours in the archives, and then you can make an appointment to see that item, that's not on display too, if you do visit Cooperstown.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
I noticed you said you live in Sudbury. That's one of the nice towns around there.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to go there with some friends because they used to have an all-you-can-eat lobster place.
Oh, I don't think it's there anymore, but I don't know if people know, but Babe Ruth lived in Sudbury for a while. His house is about less than 2 miles from my house, where he had a farmhouse and with his family. So still there.
Very nice. They nowadays, I noticed when there's a ball, for instance, hit out of the park that's memorable, there's an authenticator there right away.
Yes, yeah.
Which sort of makes it easier, I would think.
Definitely.
If he can get to the ball after the fight, some of the scrums in the outfield have been terrible. Jeez. Good stuff, Joe. Hey, look who's up next. It is the chair of the New York Giants Preservation Society, Gary Mintz. Gary, how are you?
I'm well, Bruce. Thanks. Michael, great presentation. I had to step out for a second, so if this was spoken about, I apologize. I love what you said, but I was really intrigued by your meeting the real Frank Thomas. My question to you is, you went to the Old Timers game at Citi Field to see
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I know he died, maybe 6 months later. Did you happen to go to his funeral or any?
No, well, I was in contact with his daughter, before he passed away. I talked to him. It's kind of sad for me. I talked to him when he was close to passing away, right, on the phone very briefly. His daughter was there and stuff, and he had a stroke, and he just kind of gave up, right? Basically, and stuff, and he passed away shortly afterward. I had a couple of conversations with her after he passed, but I did not go to his funeral. No, I didn't.
I got to tell you, in that dugout picture, he looked better than he did when he was standing next to you. He looked good.
Yeah, he looked good. He was really up for that. I mean, he when he came in, he had a walker, right? But when they had a red carpet, so they drove, all the players up in like buses or vans, and he came out, he had his walker, and he was like super determined to just walk on his own up the red carpet, into the stadium and stuff like that. And he was like on a man with a mission, just boom, boom, boom up the thing. And his daughter told me he was just so happy to be able to make it to that. And when I did see him in Pittsburgh, he goes, I think this is going to be my last one, last Old Timers game.
Right.
So anyway, it's great guy, really, really loved.
Well,
talking
sorry for your loss,
Yeah.
and I thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
Couple of questions that are in the chat this evening. One is from Greg Fegley. Was the Hall of Fame willing to share how they authenticated the number they have on display? Can you speak to that, Mike?
No, I asked him like if they didn't share it. No, they did. There is like a little sign, right? I don't know if you can see it in that picture, saying where it was from, but they, and I don't think they would. I asked them if they could provide me any more details, like how they acquired it or anything like that, and they could not, or they weren't willing to share that. And I'm not sure if they, on other items, if they would or they wouldn't share that information. But in this particular case, they declined to do that.
I know that the Hall of Fame is inundated with requests for authentication on a daily basis. So once you use that word in an email, I'm not surprised that you got back what you did. I'm sure that's something that they can just cut and paste to save a little bit of time. So Gary Joplin has a question in the chat. What was special about the relationship between the Thomas and Allen families? Anything that you can speak to in that, Michael?
Well, it's well documented that, in 65, Frank came onto the Phillies in 64, sort of not at the beginning, but they traded for him, and he was doing very well from a hitting perspective. And then you remember the collapse, and even Gene Mark would say one of the reasons was that Frank Thomas jammed his thumb, sliding into base, and had to couldn't play the last, I don't know, couple of weeks of the season. And when I talked to Frank, that was one of his big disappointments too. He said, I wanted to play. I said, shoot me up with Kane, whatever they had to do, and they refused to do it, to be able to play. And I think that was one of his, one of his big disappointments, that he didn't make it to a World Series or play in a World Series. But the next year there was an altercation between Dick Allen and Frank, and there's different versions of the story. And you can read it as much as I do, as I can, online. And Dick Allen being the up and coming sort of superstar, if you will, and Frank kind of, being on a little bit of the decline. After the fight, they released Frank, and he bounced around to a couple of teams gave him a chance for a small number of games, but kind of ended his career right a little bit, probably prematurely. And so that, I'm not, I have my own opinions about it. Of course, I've read stuff about it. I'm not, but everybody has to make up their own decision in terms of who was at fault, but that's probably all I can say on it. There's a lot of stuff out there, but you have to remember, there's some things where, Frank said some slurs, this and that. Frank, before he became a ball player, was in the seminary, right? So, he never used really any kind of bad language or curse words or anything like that. I never heard him say anything, bad either. So, deeper religious guy too. So, I don't know if maybe that gives a little perspective.
Interesting window into that. Ryan McClanahan, you had your hand up and you put it down. Do you still have a question, Ryan?
I do.
Go.
This was really fantastic. Thank you so much. I will be going to the Shriners. It's always an awesome time. It's kind of like a museum, to tell you the truth. Did Frank ever mention who the toughest pitcher was that he ever faced?
It was so. Oh God, he did. And it escapes me right now.
Is it Don Drysdale?
I think it was Drysdale. Yeah, it was Drysdale. I believe. I can't. I'd have to go back. I actually he let me record my 90-minute call with them, and I know he talked about it because that was one of the questions I asked. I asked him also about what size bat did you use, and he kind of went through how he started out with a heavier bat, first, and then as the season progressed, it got a little lighter and that kind of thing. But it escapes me.
That interview might be really interesting for people who want to research ball players like Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that you would be able to or willing to, I guess, lend that out or make a copy or anything like that?
There's a really good, probably much better than mine, recording on the SABR site, right? So they do these interviews with ball players, right? And there's quite a, I think it's like a two-hour interview or something with Frank Thomas, already available up on the SABR site. So I would say that would be your best thing. And there's plenty of other ones of all kinds of other players too that are fascinating up there.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
What a beautiful presentation, a very personal journey for you. And I want to thank you, Michael, for agreeing to do this and presenting this to our chapter tonight. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to go go ahead. I want to go to Dixie Tarango. Dixie's got a story as well that he would like to tell before we get moving. Go.
Okay, first of all, for those of you who have never been to a card show, just think 5 million cards in front of you worth about $10 million. And that's where you start. So you go from awesome to mind numbing. That's what you go to. And you walk around and spend a lot of money. Anyway, it's good that we have a person here who's only been in the organization for a week. I think I'm the leader in the clubhouse at 44 years. So we run the gamut here. This is a story about why you should be proud to be a SABR member. And if you're sitting back wondering if you should continue, I hope this story can help you. This morning, not last night, but this morning, when I do my best work at 2 or 3 a.m., I came to the conclusion that I needed to know something, and the only way I was going to find out would be to contact SABR people who lived in the area where my interest was for this story. I'm doing a story on a couple guys. I needed information on the 1884 Southern League, which is down in Georgia and Tennessee and places like that. So I looked up the chairman of the Nashville, Chattanooga, and Atlanta chapters. And I wrote them an email this morning, about 3:00 a.m., and said, okay, I'm looking for this information. If you know it, please let me have it. Or could you please ask someone in your chapter to just email me and see what I'd love to know what they know. So this morning, when I actually got up about 10 o'clock, there was an answer from one of the chapter members from Atlanta. He had sent me 7 newspaper clippings. How he had them on hand, I do not know. 7 newspaper clippings from the Atlanta Constitution from 1884, telling me pretty much what I wanted to know, that they in fact did have a team in 1884, because I wasn't quite sure. And that's what I really wanted to confirm. Well, luckily for me, for once, I asked, while I was thanking him for sending those, I told him that it was too bad that newspapers.com and Genealogy Bank didn't have any newspapers from Augusta, because Augusta was really the team that I was interested in. They were just part of the league, or not the league in 1884, but certainly the league in 1885. An hour and a half later, on my computer, there were 15 newspaper articles from the Atlanta Constitution about games that were played in 1884 against Augusta, and the guy I was looking for was in practically all of them. So I have the answer to all of my questions in a matter of a couple hours from people I didn't know at all 24 hours ago. That's why we belong to SABR.
I have always said that SABR people are the best people, and Dixie just confirmed it. Dixie, is this about the player that you and I spoke about?
And Toad Ramsey.
Yeah, you and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, okay. So now I've got a little more context there. Fantastic. Thank you, Dixie, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're back next Monday, November 4th. November. Oh my gosh, November. When we continue to bring the recent national convention to your computer screen with fellow SABR member Rick Solomon, who will give his SABR 52 presentation entitled Ron Guidry, When Billy Martin Managed versus When Someone Else Managed. The sign-up link is available in the SABR events calendar at sabr.org/events and is included in the meeting schedule booklet that is circulated each Monday. And finally, if you are a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our uploads. And if you're not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. Just ask Dixie Tarango. He can tell you all about it. For more information, go to sabr.org/join today. Michael Kane, you're terrific. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right, let's get everybody out of here so they can see the World Series. All right. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.